Have you ever gone out full, big dreams, big goals, but things didn't work out the way you had planned? The marriage didn't make it, pregnancy didn't last, contract didn't go through. The disappointment is simply a season. It's not the rest of your life. The disappointment, the loss, the betrayal, that's temporary. We all go through things that are not fair. People do us wrong. We didn't get the promotion, came down with an illness. You can't stop life from happening to you, but you can choose how you respond.
My childhood was pretty normal, I guess. It was pretty typical of most childhoods. There wasn't any deep trauma or anything like that. It was pretty normal. I grew up really close to my grandfather. He was a really important part of my life because he was kind of the one who always spoiled me, and I'd like to go over to his house on weekends, things like that. And I was always kind of the quiet kid, but I got along with other kids pretty well. I mean, there are always a few people who wouldn't like me, but I guess that's pretty normal. And school's always been pretty normal for me. I'm used to getting good grades, being pushed to meet all expectations, things like that. There was a point where I liked to stay to myself and just have my nose in a book to where I wouldn't really talk to people that much. But at that time, I didn't really care about fitting in or having a friend group and things like that. My mom always said I walked to the beat of my own drum, so I just like to keep to myself and focus on my own interests. I remember the exact night when my grandfather passed. I remember every single detail of it, because he was probably my favorite human being alive at that time, 'cause he was just like my best friend. So when he passed, before then, I'd always been really happy-go-lucky. I didn't like to think about the sadder parts in life. But when he passed, it was something that kind of just stuck into my brain every day, because every day I'd wake up without a granddad, and it was new and different to me, and it was hard. I didn't know how to grieve. I didn't know how to get over that kind of thing. So it was just a really big change in my life. And then a few years after that, when my dad decided that we would be moving to Pennsylvania, that was moving away from everything that I've ever known, because I was born and raised here, so I didn't know anything else but Lexington, Kentucky. And when we moved there, it was a very different environment. Everyone who was friends, they'd grown up with each other, and they'd grown up in their groups, so they weren't really looking for any new kids to take in or anything like that. So it was very difficult to break in socially. So it was a really lonely time. Usually I'd been fine with being alone because it was my choice, but when it was taken out of my hands, when it wasn't my choice anymore, when I wanted to make friends and have a group to surround myself with, I couldn't. It felt like I couldn't. And I was alone with my thoughts a lot of the times. I was alone with a lot of questions. I remember when my grandfather passed, I left me with a lot of questions about faith, because I was wondering, why would God take such a wonderful person? I think it's a certain headspace you gradually get into. Like, as every day goes by, you get gradually sadder and sadder, and you start to think more about the things that have gone wrong, more than believing that things can go right. And so it gets to a point where you start to ask yourself, well, what's even the point of waking up every morning? What's the point of getting out of bed? And then it gets to a point where you ask yourself, well, what's the point of even being alive anymore if things keep going wrong like this? So it's kind of like, I like to think of it as like a fight or flight. And when you lose the will to fight, then you just have the urge to escape somehow. Of course, that's like the first thing you think when you think escape in the most drastic way possible, really. People who ask, how could anyone want to take their own life? I feel like they're thinking about it too much, because when you're in that headspace, you aren't thinking at all, you're just feeling. And it's when you get to a point of feeling so many different things at once that the small things start to feel like signs, like, oh, this person said such and such to me, maybe that means I shouldn't be here, things like that. It's where you get in a headspace so deep and dark that the smallest things can cause this huge negative downward spiral. And when other people are trying to pull you out and say, well, what's wrong, what's going on, sometimes you do want their help, but it's just, you feel like they don't know how to help, or that you can't be helped. Or a lot of the times it's you don't even know what to say to answer the question, what's wrong, because it just feels like everything's wrong and you don't even know how to articulate it. When I first started noticing that there was recovery possible was it felt like it was too soon for me, actually. I was still in the hospital bed, because So a lot of people who were really close friends to me came to visit me, and they would just talk encouragement to me, and that was really, really helpful. And then getting out of that, going through all the counseling and the therapy and the things like that to start healing, I feel like counseling is something that a lot of people think is only for crazy people, but in reality, I don't think there's a person alive who doesn't need some kind of professional help, because life happens and we can't always handle it on our own. So sometimes you can go to prayer, you can go to faith, and that's perfectly fine if that's what you want to do, but sometimes you might want to check on getting professional help, because I found that to be really helpful for me, because it's a time where I can go and just sort of lose my filter and feel open and safe to talk about whatever it is that's on my mind without being judged or punished or whatever for what's going on in my mind. I wanted to share this mainly to let people know that there is another option, that people always say that suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem, and that, I find that to be very true. I didn't want to hear it when I was going through those kind of things, but I do find it to be true. And even if this is something that you'll never experience, and I hope that nobody does, but even if this is something that you'll never experience, it's just another reason to watch what you say to people. Like, smile at somebody. It costs nothing to be nice to someone, and you never know how much it's going to help them. As for my future, I'd like to go to college for sure. I know I definitely want to go to college. I know I want to focus on the arts. I want to create things. I want to use what I've been through to help other people who are going through. So I love music. I think I want to make music, or maybe visual art, something like that. Sometimes the tunnel does seem really dark and it's hard to see the light at the end, but there is a light at the end. This is my story. I'm Timia Higgins.